Great moments are born from great opportunity.
Baseball is what gets inside you. It's what lights you up. You can't deny that.
Football is about controlling that anger, harnessing that aggression into a team effort to achieve perfection.
It's supposed to be hard. If it wasn't hard, everyone would do it. The hard is what makes it great.
Let's go to work.
We're back, Bubs. Episode 2. It's good to see you again.
Yes, absolutely.
We got a heavy topic, but before we get into it, want to thank everybody who listened. We got a lot of good feedback from those of you that listened out there, and I got to tell you, Bubs, it's been a long week. I may or may not be drinking something as we're recording this. But topic, we're gonna go. We're gonna dive into parents and what it's like to be a parent in sports, and some of the different issues that we face as parents, and then some of the different issues that we face as coaches. But before we do, kind of want to give everybody, all the listeners, a setup of what we're doing as far as our show. We did the introduction, but this is kind of how the show is going to work. We're going to start off with, and we can't decide if it's going to be the first pitch, the kickoff, or the jump ball, but that'll be the main point of the episode. We'll discuss that, then we'll get into the halftime or the mound visit, and we'll answer questions that we've received from a couple of the listeners out there, and kind of tie it to the topic of the day, and then we'll finish it with the Hail Mary. I asked you, is there a name for it to count?
I say we do like a suicide squeeze type thing.
Suicide squeeze. There we go.
Suicide squeeze to end it out. Yeah.
The suicide squeeze or the Hail Mary. And and we'll kind of touch on the topic. So all that being said, Bubs, anything to add to the listeners before we get going?
I think we got some great feedback. I mean, like we talked about, the toughest thing to do is really talk about yourself, right? That's really tough to do, but hopefully they got a good idea of our background in coaching, why we coach, and just our, opinions towards it. So yeah, I thought it was great feedback. So we appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. It is real hard to, dive into the details of us, but important so that way you guys know who we are and where we're coming from. With that being said, let's dive into the first pitch, the kickoff, the jump ball. Parents are the most important piece to an athlete's success, and as a parent, we are responsible for creating the environment for them to thrive in. Bubs, I'm gonna kick it to you right away. How do we categorize parents right off the bat?
I've experienced just every angle of parent, right? One of the toughest memories I've had of coaching is a senior day at Jefferson High School, where I had to walk an athlete out.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely toughest thing I can remember with my coaching journey. The no support clause. And it's, in my opinion, really hard to get the most out of a student athlete if there's not some support outside of the fence, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
So yeah, definitely have had the no support. I flipped that, and at Colorado Academy, we had a really premier pitcher who every time he pitched, he would come to me and say, "Coach, I cannot have my dad anywhere near the backstop." Because every word, it was almost like a panic attack. It wasn't like, now, you get some kids, "Hey dad, you're a little too loud." No, this kid was literally like, "I don't want to play baseball if my dad is around." So dealing with that, having to take different angles and deal with that. And then you go to big school baseball, right? Where every athlete wants to play collegiately. And those parents are extremely involved. Yeah. We're talking, Jess, I had coached a long time, and I was open to families coming to practices, doing stuff, really confident in what I was doing. But at Chatfield, I mean, we probably had 10 to 12 parents at practices just watching.
I think, I think that's so important from a coaching standpoint. And I know we're talking about parents, but so important that you're not hiding anything, right? And I think that's one of the disconnects between parents and coaches, when that thought is, I can't come to practice, or I can't ask the coach questions. What are we hiding as coaches, right? At the end of the day, we are responsible for the most prized possession that anybody ever owns, was their children, for 2.5-3 hours a day. And if we're not taking that responsibility serious as coaches, then we're doing a disservice to the parents. And then you get the distrust and the the questioning everything that you're doing because you're not open to communication with them. And I think at the end of the day, as a parent now, all I want to know is that my kid's safe. They're being taught. I definitely want to know that they're being taught well, and that's frustrating when that doesn't happen. But you're with my child, right? Like, this is my most important thing that I have possession of.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing that we would, I'd have Diamond Club meetings. Jess, we're talking at Chatfield once a month, over 200 people in a Diamond Club meeting, like in an auditorium once a month, because the communication process was so key with me in a big program like that. And I would always let them know, like, hey, I'm a parent. I know you want what is best for your student athlete. Like, that is a no-brainer. That is your skin in the game. That is your investment. We totally understand that. But from a coaching angle, we have to do what's best for, because essentially they're all our children during that season.
Yeah.
Year round. We were 10 months a year. I was probably seeing their kids more than they were with year-round athletics. We were traveling together in the summer. We were doing a ton of things together. And I think just having parents buy into that aspect. My biggest thing that I always talked about was just supporting the experience of not only their kid, but for other kids around them, right? Creating that culture where everybody enjoyed the experience. And you meet some good parents that jump on board and make it a really fun ride. And then you meet some parents that headbutt that, and majority of the time it's the parents that have that disconnect. It's not necessarily the athlete to coach. And I don't think we talk about that enough.
No, we don't. And so we talked about the absent parent. You talked about the traditional helicopter parent, and then now more recently, we got the mama bear parents, where they're doing, I want to protect my child at any cost, by any means necessary. I will protect my child. And there's 100% nothing wrong with that, right? Again, these are our kids. We're going to protect them. But I think as parents, you have to put things in perspective. And, if you're protecting them from disappointment, or you're protecting them from a criticism, you're not giving them any tools to develop in life. You're really coddling them, and you're handicapping them when they get out into the real world, because there's no apologies once you step out of organized sports and education. When you get out into the real world, real story, Bubs. I had a parent, we have this tardy policy because tardies have been pretty bad. We have this tardy policy, and we sent out the new tardy policy at school. Parent emailed verbatim, said, it is okay for my kid to be late, because in the real world, they could be as late as they want.
Wow.
And this was like, they really meant it.
Yeah, well, think about that though, right? And then let's say that athletes put it in a team sport, okay?
Mm-hmm.
And they're in let's use baseball. 9 athletes out on the field, and they show up late to 3 or 5 days. In a program like mine, that kid is probably not playing much, right?
Right.
And I'm gonna have to put out the fires with that parent because of that mindset, right?
Yeah.
And that's the issue. And then not only does that mindset happen between that parent and that athlete, but that athlete is again around other athletes. So ideally, what are those other athletes probably going to try to do?
Yeah.
So that culture just spreads, and it's tough to deal with from a standpoint of coaching, man. It's really, really tough.
And I think that's the perspective that most parents, there are good parents that have that perspective, but most parents don't have that perspective of, it's not just about your kid. Right. And it's not just about his results or her results. There is an entire team out there that is being coached up to execute the game plan in football, or the strategy in baseball. They're being coached up to execute that as a team, and everybody has their role. And whether, you're striking out or you're missing a tackle or whatever the case may be, that is not the entire experience of sports. Right. There's so much more to it. I think I used to tell parents is, like, I think 90% of what your kid experiences through high school football is not on game day. It's during practice. So what they're getting out of it comes in practice. It's not in games.
No, it's so true. And then we talk about just all of the experiences that they have through team sports that helps them out just in life, man. Yeah. And I don't think that's, like, no one really understands that. Like, we were trying to build high character young men, through the game of baseball, first and foremost. And then we wanted to them to become baseball players after that. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes the perspective from parents is completely opposite. I'm the baseball coach, so my job is only baseball. That 100% is not the route I was taking with my journey, you know?
Yeah, for sure. We had this saying, and Coach Noble, who's the head coach at Alameda, he brought it in when he was my defensive coordinator. He used to say the best sons and the best students are the best football players, and that's what we're trying to do together, right? Like we're monitoring the school part, but we're also trying to make sure that he's being great at home. He's helping out with little brother. He's helping out with the chores and all that stuff. And if you can do those two things, then the football part becomes easy.
100%. Yeah. But all those traits, again, are really built through team sports, in my opinion.
Yeah.
You know, we're able to, you know, magnify that. We're able to fine tune it. And yeah, they become better people, man. It's not just, you know, X's and O's.
Yeah. So when did you put your kids in sports? When in team sports?
In team sports, we started definitely on the rec side. I want to say my oldest, you know, Tinks was probably playing baseball at 4 or 5. So, you know, just YMCA type stuff, got him going to just another style of rec of like coach pitch I helped out with. They didn't really do anything really quote unquote tryout based until I got to the facility.
Yeah.
You know, here at Play Ball, we're all tryout based. It's not a pay to play type mindset, which I think is key. I don't know, you know, Andrew started, you know, when he was 10 on the club side, just because I had the facility, and Rachel's just getting going. So my daughter will play her first club season. She's going to be 9. So they'll play 10U on the softball side, you know?
Yeah. And I want to get your thoughts about it. The reason I asked the question. I have a very strong opinion about when our kids should be into team sports, right? And I think when we put, and not for you, right, but I think when we put our kids in team sports, and I'm talking soccer, football, basketball, those complex sports where the movements are complex. I think when we put our kids into those things, that's for us, it's not for the kid. Because developmentally, a kid doesn't know how to share at that age. So you're asking a kid to execute team strategy. Baseball is different because, and you could tell me I'm wrong on this, but baseball is different because it's an individual sport that has team concept in it, right? It's hitting, catching, base, throwing.
Yeah, catching, throwing, another kid catching, throwing type stuff. Sure.
Yeah. So I have a theory, and you know, I was trying to play it out with my sons until COVID hit. But you know, 4, 5, 6, and even 7, your kids, in my opinion, should be in camps that focus on skill development. And then they should be doing things that help them develop how to move their body, right? Track and field, gymnastics, dance, taekwondo, like different wrestling, like different types of martial arts that help you develop how to move your body. Because if you want to dribbling a basketball is a very complex sport, right? You're using your hands, it's hand-eye coordination. You got to move, so now you're moving your feet. And if you don't know how your body works, you're never going to be able to execute that skill. And as a parent, you come back and you get frustrated with the kid or the coach because the kid's not dribbling the right way when they haven't had the time to develop that skill.
I think that is fair, Jess, for sure. I could absolutely see that. Yeah.
And it came to a head when COVID happened.
Right. No, I get it. So that was your plan. So you were going to put that out until, what did you say, till 7?
Till 7 was my thought, to put him into team sports. And things were going smooth until COVID happens. And then, you know, the kids miss out socially because of COVID, and football was the only thing that opened up. And, you know, we said, well, let's put him in football so that way he could be around other kids at least. And this was Philip, my oldest, and just get him out there and see what happens. Terrible experience. You know, we could get to all this stuff, but he had a terrible experience in it because coach he wasn't doing the right things, right? Like they were running laps for standing in line for too long. And I'm sitting back and I'm watching, and I'm pulling my hair out. And that's when my wife told me, she goes, you need to coach him or shut the hell up.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Yeah. And we'll talk about that too.
Yeah, for sure. But we put him in there. And, you know, now I was picking up the pieces the year later to try and get him to get back to it because, you know, I love football. The football is my thing. And to see him be so discouraged with it, it really broke my heart. So going back to what I was saying, you know, track and field where he's learning how to run. If you watch his stride right now, like he can move, right? So as parents, I think we have to ask ourselves, why am I putting them in sports? And society gives us a lot of pressure to put them in sports right away. 4 or 5, you're playing flag football.
Right.
And you know, it's if you're just doing it so they can be out there and be active, then fine. Then sit back and watch, let them be active. But if you're thinking that your son, your daughter is going to go out there and be a great teammate or catch
Or
1,000 footballs, score touchdowns
yeah,
and stuff.
or strike out 10, or if you're applying that pressure and making it on, and bottom line is it's uncomfortable at an early age, that develops a long-term issue,
Yeah, and it really it is it's about us as parents at that age, because you experienced it, right? Kids don't care if they won or lost.
They have no idea.
No, they at the end of the game, you win a game. Who's brought the snacks? What are we having for snacks?
Yeah, 100%.
You lost the game. Like, who brought the snacks? Like, they want the fun out of it. They want the experience out of it. And I think we as adults, as parents, we ruin that experience for them a lot.
I totally agree with you. And I've probably been guilty until my journey of coaching sees the final product, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like us being high school guys, college guys, I see the back end of all of the experiences they've had to get to play at a high level.
Yeah.
I think that's really grounded me with my kids alone.
Mm-hmm.
Like I know what routes I care about my relationship more with them as a dad than I will ever be as a coach. And probably early on in my coaching career, Jess, when they were young, I probably couldn't say that, I wanted them to be the best. And I was the guy, always critiquing stuff, even when they showed success. I was that dad. And just being around the final product, I'm like, man, like I'm part of that issue. I need to make sure I'm not taking that home. And I'm just having fun with the experiences,
Yeah, we're competitive people. And the reality is, because we're around sports so much, because you live it, I live it, that's who we are. The likelihood of our kids wanting to be around it and be part of it is pretty high, and sometimes it's hard to just kind of let that marinate and let it flourish on its own, because, my son out there playing catch with his brother, and he drops his elbow when he throws. He's a lefty. Dang lefties,
Yeah, right. That's good.
And you're a lefty, but he slings it, but his elbow is low, and I constantly want to correct him. The coach in me cannot let that slide,
Right.
But the dad in me has to say, just leave him, just let him be. There's a time to correct it. There's a time to just let him be.
Yeah, let him have fun. Yeah, let him enjoy his experience. Where like you said, that simple correction or consistent correction could be an issue long-term wise.
Yeah.
Man, I'm telling you, I experienced it with the kid, literally the kid at CA, where his dad would just say something similar to that. Mm-hmm. Hey, you're falling off. Hey, you're doing something, just being too vocal. And it would literally almost panic attack an athlete. And, it probably developed when he was a 7 or 8 when dad was saying
that. For sure.
And
I had the same experience as a coach when I finally did come back and coach him that next year. He was playing quarterback, and here comes coach, right?
I get it. And again, I get it. You'll have your time and place for it, but you're right. Like, we just got to enjoy it, and like you said, they'll come around.
Yep. So going back to the absent parents, right? And you've experienced both. I haven't experienced both. The majority of the schools that I've been at have been the absent parents, and there's some, as a coach, there's some beauty to that. But when you look at the kids and when you see what their struggles are, it's really disheartening. And our kids, those kids need their parents around, want their parents around. And to look up in the stands and to see, you have a team of 30 to 50, and you look up in the stands and there's 20 parents there. What's worse? Is it worse to have the absent parent, or is it worse to have the helicopter parent? I can comment on the absent parent, but I've never been a part of the helicopter parent. Not as a whole, anyway.
Yeah, not as a whole. I mean, I guess it's to each their own. To be honest, I probably had way more issues with the helicopter parent than I would have ever had with the absent parent. And you're right. It's unfortunate for the athlete. But they're so appreciative of the experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
The hovering parent really tarnishes the experience for the athlete, and that was always the issue, is when was when was it going to be good enough? You always have those. And there's a whole different type of community, the Joe Torre parent, right? So Joe Torre parent, I tell my families at those Diamond Club meetings, are the parents that can sit in the stands and immediately pick out everything that they don't agree with, right?
Yeah.
Like, just that mindset. Like, they're just back behind the stands. They have their sunflower seeds out. We just got done chalking the field. We just threw a 2-hour prior game BP. We're rolling some stuff out, and they just have no idea of the situations that could happen that day, that week in practice, any of that. But they'll be there in the stands, immediately depicting any idea or adjustment or field alignment or batting, anything you can think of, And that's just a negative mindset too, that I made sure and addressed when I was with those big crowds. Like, having the confidence to do that. Like, Jess, you're an AD, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is probably not good of me, but I would, when I first got hired, we'll take Chatfield, for instance, just because of the big demographic. I was like, hey guys, this is how things are going to be, with my AD and my principal in the Diamond Club meeting. And I was like, if you're not on board with that, your athlete doesn't have to participate, or there's a high school about a mile this way or a high school 2 miles that way, because we're going to be all in with 2 feet on this type of culture that's going to be built. And again, the little background behind that, I was the 5th coach in 4 years.
Yeah.
I just don't think anybody really addressed that. And it wasn't like I'm right, you're wrong. It was just like, we're going to come to this medium and I'm executing the plan. We're hoping that you are just on board with it, because the experience will be great for everybody involved if you do that,
And results come from that vertical alignment, right? Like, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And all the way down to the parent, this is, right. If we're all on the same page, the success that you are screaming in the stands for will come.
100%. Like, we always talk about, we want to win over the respect of the athlete, right? Like, they don't know how much, or they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? So we want to establish that. We want to make sure that they know that I care for you more than just being a baseball player for me. That's check mark number 1. Number 2, absolutely, is the parent, because you got to make sure that they're not going to detour or derail that type of relationship, right? They don't want to, we could never handle the parents, hey, jump in the car. Hey, you didn't play third base today. Your coach is an idiot. Why aren't you playing third base? The kid knows why he's not playing third base, for one. And I don't think that's ever a communication piece. They automatically want to go to the negative side of it. And that just creates that dented culture, man. That creates that bad vibe, and misery loves company, Jess. And at the high school level, one disgruntled family or kid could mean a ton of them, So just being confident, making sure everyone's on board, or letting them know, if you don't like this, then it's maybe not a ticket, you want to jump on,
Yeah. It's not for you. I remember, and on the other side of it, my first experience with this was at the Boys and Girls Club, and I had this little athlete. I think he was 9 at the time, but he was playing up with the 10 and 11-year-olds, and he's amazing little athlete, and he had the greatest attitude. And we went and played a game, and all of a sudden, like, his name was Trey, and Trey was just acting up. Like, he was trying to show out. He was dribbling like all over the place. He wasn't getting back on defense. He was talking smack, and I just didn't know where it was coming from. And at a timeout, I was talking to him, and he was looking over his shoulder, and he was just checking. His dad was there. It's the first time his dad ever went to a game. He was trying to show out for his dad. And, it was just eye-opening to me, like, how much even the toughest kids, right? We think our kids in the inner city are so tough because we're hardened, like, we're calloused, but like we're a lot of the kids that grow up in that situation are missing that love. And you want that love from your dad, and he saw his dad, and he completely just lost it. And then at the end of the game, they lost, and he was in like tears on the middle of the court at 9 years old. And it was rough to watch. And finally got to talk to him about it, and he's like, my dad's here. And I introduced myself to the dad, and dad was gone again,
Oh, wow. That's obviously a difficult experience, but it means so much. I mean, think about it, 9 years old, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's crazy to really, have to put in perspective. A 9-year-old that wasn't getting the support or it's really attention, Jess.
It's attention, yeah.
You want the positive attention, or the, reassurance that, hey, you did well. I was able to watch you play. Like, that is very key. And again, that's from parents.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so we're at halftime now, Bubs. Let's go to the huddle. most important part of a football game is halftime adjustments and then the mound visit, So what we want to do today is we got a couple questions and we want to answer them from a parent perspective. The first question came from Oscar Colmenero. He's one of my former players. He played wide receiver for me. His question is regarding the fitness and nutrition side of sports. He said, I know back in my time as a student athlete, this was never really touched on until I got to Fort Hays. He went to college at Fort Hays. Even at that, it was at the most basic level, especially on the nutrition side of the topic. My question is, how has this improved through the years, or if it hasn't, why? So thank you, Oscar. Good to hear from you, my man. Number one, so from the football side of it, I think parents must understand this, right? If I want elite level athletes, or if I want my child to compete at an elite level, the nutrition and the things that we put into our body have to come as a priority. Maybe not first, right? The physical and the skills and all that have to come, but what we're putting into our body has to come as a priority. One thing that I noticed when I was at Lincoln, we got to a point when our culture had flipped and we were getting a lot of kids in the weight room, and these kids were working their tails off in the weight room. And I noticed that they weren't gaining any weight. They weren't, it wasn't really showing on their bodies, but it was showing on their strength. They were showing strength gains and stuff. And just kind of talking to people around, talked to John Morgan. He actually came out and spoke to the team.
Yeah.
But what it is, it's nutrition, right? They weren't putting anything in their bodies to replenish all that hard work that they were doing. So their bodies were just kind of using all that energy, and then they wouldn't get it back. So the easiest thing, and people think that nutrition has to be this expensive thing, and it doesn't really have to be. One thing for all athletes, chocolate milk. There's a huge movement on chocolate milk. If you go and do a lift or something like that, afterwards drink 8 ounces of chocolate milk, and it puts those proteins that you need back in your body. And we could do a whole segment on nutrition, but the most important thing to me is we got to stop eating shit. We've got to stop eating bad things. And as young people, as teenagers and young kids, we can get away with it a little bit more because our bodies will adapt. But what you're doing at the young age is you're developing good habits. So that way, when they get to the point where they're trying to push their bodies to be elite, when they're getting high school and they're trying to be great athletes, that part of the nutrition part comes easy. We had this joke at Lincoln. We were like, even the seagulls around Lincoln are fat. Because they would
eat all of that lunchtime stuff.
Yeah, they would eat up all the hot Cheetos that were left in the parking lot, and the seagulls were huge, dude. But it's an important part, and it wasn't discussed a whole lot. It's really prevalent now, but it wasn't discussed a whole lot. And I think, and especially in the inner cities, we need something to help kids with nutrition, because they don't want to eat the cafeteria food,
right?
Because cafeteria food's nasty. So they go to the store, they get hot Cheetos, they get whatever, and they're eating, right? We all did it. And it's not that big a deal again when you're that age. But if you're trying to be elite, if you're trying to be great, if you're trying to get an edge and you're trying to get to the next level, your nutrition has to be a part of it.
Totally agree. I'm kind of experiencing that now. Obviously, my oldest is in 8th grade. Daniel's a bigger kid, extremely bigger kid. And me being able to coach at the collegiate side, seeing how these college athletes take care of their body, what their intake is, how their work regimen is and stuff, like I'm extremely lucky to experience that, witness that for my children, like Daniel, like your athletic ability is by far a grade, above grade level, but a big reason why these athletes are playing at an elite level is because of their body, especially on the baseball side, right?
Yep.
So it's good just getting tidbits, you're able to pass that down to my 11-year-old Andrew, and then Rachel, like she's going to be around those habits that we're trying to develop and do. At the high school level, it's tough, like you said. We're always eating on the go. You get multi-sport athletes that, well, we'll get into that segment too. The rare, the white buffalo of multi-sport athletes. But yeah, so I know it's tough, but it's extremely important right now to play at a high level. And
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Jess, I'll go to a complex, right? Like last summer, I was able to go out to San Diego, and there's a million baseball players at these complexes,
Mhm.
and they probably all are very similar in athletic ability. But I'm going to look at bodies of kids in order for me to go and recruit. I'm
Yeah.
going to go say, wow, that kid's really, really well put together. I want to go see how he looks in the batter's box, how this kid looks in on the pitching mound, and it's kind of funky for me to say that, but you're judging them by their builds because they're all essentially the same athlete.
Yeah. And what their build says about them is discipline, right?
Correct.
Discipline and commitment, because you don't look like that. You can want to look like that all you want. And you can start and you can go for 2 weeks and you can
Right.
go for a month. But if you're not committed to it, so it's showing their commitment. And if you're not disciplined enough to do it over and over and over again, then you don't have the discipline to be a college athlete for sure.
For sure. For sure.
Because I think the big misconception, I think everybody wants the signing day picture of Instagram and post on signing day, right?
Right.
But the reality is when you get to that level, and you can speak on this a little bit more, when you get to that level, it's more or less a job, right? We're paying you through scholarship to perform.
It is, you are an investment.
Yeah.
Period. You're an investment, like I've had that talk with the collegiate athlete, like, our university is helping you with your education.
Mhm.
And in return, you're expected to perform at an extremely high level for this university.
Yeah.
And that is in the classroom for one, and then obviously on the athletic field for two. Like that is the agreement when you're playing at a high level.
Yeah. And to bring it back to the origin of why we started the podcast and the difference in body types, right? Let's just take body types. When you get them big wide hips on a football field and you get that strong stocky body, that's worked on, that's nutrition that's put into that body. So I think one thing I would say to parents, like, make some substitutions. I'm not giving up smothered burritos. I'm not giving up Mexican food, right? And to ask me to give up Mexican food, I would tell you, hell no, like just back out my face. But there are some things that you can do, right? Instead of white flour tortilla, you can substitute it for a wheat tortilla. The difference is you want to eat complex carbs, which is in wheats, grains, things like that. So you eat a wheat tortilla compared to a white tortilla. Flour sticks into your gut. The complex carbs give you energy. So you can substitute, that'll help out. The other thing that we do is we substitute, instead of iceberg lettuce on our tacos or whatever, you throw some spinach on there. Those thick leafy greens have a little bit more nutrition in them than just iceberg lettuce, which is just water basically. So just a couple of things for parents who, we're not giving up Mexican food. I refuse to, but there are certain things, and then if you could cut back your portions a little bit and eat healthy portions, it really helps out too for those kids. If you're trying to gain weight as an athlete in high school, be patient with it, because it's going to take time. If your metabolism, like when I was in 9th grade and you were kind of the same way, bro, I was a pole.
Yeah, we were tiny. I was
yeah.
for sure, yeah.
And I could eat whatever I wanted, and and that kind of bad habit carried over into later on to life. But it's an important topic, and maybe we'll touch base a little bit more about that. Second question. All the way, we're global, Bubs. We are global.
My man.
Global.
My man, yeah.
We came all the way from Ireland. We got
Nice.
Vinny Kilcollins, who we went to middle school with, and Vinny's doing great out there in Ireland, I believe, right? Is it Ireland?
Is it Scotland?
Scotland. It's Scotland. It's Scotland.
Is it Scotland?
It's
Okay.
Scotland, because he's in the kilt.
Yeah, he is.
But his question is as follows. He says, with the transfer portal in college sports at the moment, how have you seen the changes it has had on high school athletes? He's interested in finding out how us as coaches, to our younger generation, how do you prepare them for the next stage of madness? So I think he's asking, how do we prepare kids for the collegiate level, and what does the transfer portal look like for you? And what is it like at the high school level?
Okay, yeah, we can definitely touch base on that. Okay, transfer portal, in my opinion, is going to be a consistent trickle effect, I would say, all the way down to probably the 2027 graduation year. I think it's going to go that far down. Now, transfer portal, I coach at Division II school, four-year university. A lot of our incoming players are junior college transfers. So I think what the transfer portal has done has made it extremely difficult for athletes out of high school to attempt to play at four-year universities, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
So from a recruitment standpoint, am I going to go get a freshman out of Colorado that just completed 23-game high school season and had, let's say, I don't know, 60, 70 at-bats against high school athletes? Or am I going to go get a junior college athlete that has just played in the Maricopa League in Arizona, Woodbat Conference, and has 125 at bats against kids throwing 95 miles an hour, right?
Yeah.
So that effect has been huge. We're going to take majority of the junior college athletes, and some coaches had that route prior to the portal. I think now it's just magnified a lot more because of the Division I aspect. Athletes get an extra year of eligibility. There's just so much. It is logjam rosters across the board. I think the realistic route is having families and athletes buy into just playing at the next level is, and you should be extremely grateful for it at any level, NAIA Division III or the junior college route. Because I think a lot of families and athletes try to bypass those, kind of like those are like last on the plate. With the transfer portal, just they better be first. You better be reaching out to every junior college possible. Because they have to go grab the high school athlete because there's only 2 years of eligibility there.
Right.
So, that trickle effect, in my opinion, is going to go pretty deep. It's going to be around for a while.
Is it affecting more the high school athlete, or is it affecting more those kids that are like jumping into the transfer portal thinking that the grass is greener?
It's extremely tough for the high school athlete. Like I look at some of these graduation classes of really good, they're asking some of these top tier, I want to say some of our Colorado baseball prospects were asked to take gap years. Like, imagine that. Like, you're like, first team all Colorado, and they're saying, hey, we're log jammed. Like, don't waste a year of eligibility. Can you take a gap year? Like that's unheard of, So, and they're only asking, the high school athletes. And then the portal, I mean, you better have Jess, I don't think I'm exaggerating. The portal this summer for the baseball side, 3,200. I'm not exaggerating. Yeah, I don't think I'm far off by that at all. Just kids, like you said, thinking that the grass is greener, and it's extremely tough. I get it. At Metro this past year, we had a 41-man roster, 41 athletes on a, only 9 play at a time,
Yeah.
So I get it. You kind of want to see if the grass is greener. I'm not playing here. I want to go somewhere else. But, that's a tough decision because you may be left out to dry, A lot of people are ending their careers because of that.
I hear that's happening a lot in college football. All these guys getting out of their wherever they were at, and they're trying to jump into the transfer portal, and they're left without a scholarship. Right. Because they thought the grass was greener, and now they're not picked up. I think, as a parent, to tie this back to parents, you have to be honest. You have to be honest with your kids, right? And you have to teach your kids to be honest with themselves, because if you're not, like, that's what happens. You have a great opportunity, whether you're 10th on the bench or you're the starter, right? You are involved in collegiate athletics. You are part of the 0 or the 2% of kids that participate in collegiate athletics. Right. Like, be grateful for that. Be grateful for that.
Yeah. No, I get it. I used to tell my parents, I'm like, hey, take your athletes to a junior college baseball game, right? Mm-hmm. And literally sit back and watch 9 innings of baseball at the JUCO level and ask yourself if you could play at that level, if you feel you're better than that level, right? Mm-hmm. And Jess, I've coached major league draft picks at, we've had some kids that were top tier kids, and right out of high school, like, that should be a route that a ton of kids are taking. They're like, just for one, we'll go back to the past topic, just the weight room in general, right? Yeah. You go to the junior college level, you find your body, you're able to develop stuff, you're able to align it. Yes, it's a process. It's not the shortcut route to go and say, hey, on what did you call it? Signing day, I signed Division I.
Yeah.
I signed and I did this. No, it's okay to put your nose down and grind, especially with the portal,
Yeah. In high school, at the high school level, one big misconception that parents make is that, and this is in football, I don't know how it is in baseball, but that if I don't go to school A, which is the big school, that I'm not going to get recruited. And I'll tell you this right now. We had every Division I school in the area and every recruiter that was supposed to recruit us in the Pac-12 come through Lincoln High School.
Yeah.
And if you are good enough, parents, if your kid is good enough, they will find you. I can show you, and I'll tag a clip that I still have from a coach from CU that came to one of our 6 a.m. practices, and they will find you. One thing that we did is we built great relationships with those guys. And again, parents, you have to understand that Division I athletics, 0.01% of kids who play high school sports will play Division I. If the goal is to play college sports, there's plenty of opportunity. You mentioned JUCO. There's JUCOs in football. There's JUCOs in basketball. There's JUCOs everywhere. There's Division II. There's Division I AA. There's Division III. There is an opportunity to play if that's the goal. If the goal is to play. But if your goal is only Division I, then we're talking, there's a lot that has to go into that, right? Like your nutrition, your height, your weight, your strength, like all that stuff is going to play a part in it. But if you are your grades, yeah, not to
the
mention
biggest part, to be NCAA eligible, no one realizes that.
Yeah.
Man. They throw that D1 label out there, and the minute they look at GPA, you're a JUCO kid, man.
Yeah.
You know, you're below that certification. Go get 2 years, get your grades up, and we'll find you.
Yeah. And the other thing, it's not a right. I don't know when the thought or when this became like, I have to play, I'm going to play Division I football. I'm going to play. You're not. If you're not good enough, you're not going to play. This is that level. Once you get to that level, that is true top end competitive sports. And you're recruiting the best kids to play on your team. So just parents understand that. The number two is the parents, you have to understand how transfers work at the high school level. What we see right now is a lot of people just looking for the grass is greener. Things aren't going my way right now, so I'm going to pull the plug and I'm going to go somewhere else. You are hurting your kids' chances of being recruited if that's the goal, if you do that, because the likelihood of you missing a year of school, of a year of competition is bad. And I know now, this is another topic, club sports, right? So baseball is not getting really recruited during baseball season in high school. I guess speaking just for football, if you're transferring your sophomore year, you're likely losing your junior year, and that's your big recruiting year.
Yep.
So we have to be smart as parents and know what the transfer rules are. And then to Chassa, we got to fix that rule.
I agree.
It's just not what's best for kids.
Totally.
It's not equitable. And again, another topic. Let's get back to the parents. Final thoughts, Buzz. What's your final thought? Let's get to the squeeze bunt and the Hail Mary. Let's throw it up. Let's see
what we got. Yeah. So what I during those Diamond Club meetings, what I always ended with on talking to the parents was just a simple phrase, like through the good, the bad, when they had to get up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday to drop their kids off at bullpens, when we won by 10, when we lost by 10, when their kid played 5 innings or didn't play at all. The phrase I used is, what more can I do? Just a simple phrase, just for them to ask themselves, just remind themselves again of not only the experience for their student athlete, but for the program's experience. It was just a big reflection. Like, I don't think people really buy into the community base, right? We talk about youth athletics. Like, in my opinion, everybody that has a backyard can start their own youth team, right? There's really no community or culture behind that. But I know from a high school standpoint, or coaching through the high school, that was the number one priority, was representing our community well, and then everything else after that was the added bonus. So that phrase, what more can I do? I think, I would hope parents would attempt to use more, and it's just going to set up a good experience for everyone involved.
I'm going to kind of go in a different route with my Hail Mary here. And, I want to address something that I always hear from parents. And, it's more so now as an administrator. It was sometimes as a coach, but I think as a coach, I was more easily respected. And this comment doesn't come to me, but I hear it a lot. And I'm going to start off with this. Parents, we have to teach our kids accountability. We have to teach our kids that they are responsible for their actions. And as much as we want to save them, as much as we want to bail them out, as much as it hurts us to see them hurt, we have to let our kids struggle on that edge, because we're not teaching them how to be successful in athletics. We're not teaching them how to be successful in life when we are constantly coming to their rescue. And I hear this all the time, Bubs. I hear, I'm protecting my kid, and I want to protect my kid. I'm protecting my kid. And I agree. Like, I'm going to protect my kid, right?
Right.
Athletics is a controlled environment. We've seen it. We've seen the fights that happen at these youth baseball games. I can tell you right now, Bubs, there was a gun pulled at a 6 and 7 year old flex football game that my son was not in. He was walking to it, and there's cops scattered all over just this last weekend.
Wow.
And the funny thing is, these were parents fighting each other on the same team.
Oh,
And they pulled the guns out.
wow.
Athletics is a controlled environment. Schools are a controlled environment. When we bring the streets into these situations, we kill it for kids. And we have to stop doing that as adults. If you want to be a gangster and you want to do all that, please don't bring it to the fields. Please don't bring it to the schools. Understand, I've been in schools and in sports my entire adult life since I was 18 years old. And never once has a kid on the field brought out a gun. Do they overreact? Yeah, they overreact. Do fights happen on the field? Yeah, they happen on the field. But you know what? There are coaches, there are officials there to break it up. And the last point I'll make, because I don't want to go too far on this, because a lot of things are close to home right now with some situations that are happening in the community that I work in. But if referees and officials do not lose games, there's not one bad call. Like, bad calls happen. Like, they're imperfect, and it's okay to get upset with it. It's okay to boo and like, oh, that's a terrible call. But then you got to let it go. You
Right.
got to teach your kids to let it go. You got to teach your athletes to move on from that, because you can't constantly use somebody else's mistake as the reason why you are not successful.
Right.
That is the victim mentality. And you and I talk about all the time, Buzz. Like, part of the big reason we are where we are is because we never said like,
For me.
oh, I'm Mexican and they don't like me. We never used the excuse of I'm poor and we can't do this. And I know there's real stuff that happens out there in the world. There's real racism. There's real issues that go on in this world. But we have to look in the mirror. How do I get better and keep getting better?
Yeah, we didn't detour because of it. We didn't use it as, a reason why we couldn't. If we ever thought about it, we kept it to ourselves and we used it more as motivation. It fueled us to work harder, me personally, but it wasn't anything that we wasted our breath on, and I see that, man. Like it's hard, I'm pretty active on social media, Jess, like, just the sports side, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, all that type stuff. And it's getting to the point now, man, where I open up and I hear of these little league teams getting banned. I hear of these coaches, going immediately to the race card. And these are leaders of our youth, right?
Right.
And I never wanted, I was lucky I was never around a coach like that. Like, oh, well, they don't want us here because, we're brown. We can't play in this league because we didn't get that call because these officials are white and we're brown. Like I've never seen it go to that immediately, like that's always the topic or that's always the reason. And it's hard knowing that I'm raising kids during that. And, the adults in those situations are posting, stuff like that.
Yeah.
I can't wrap my head around that, man. I've never used that in 20 some years. I've never said it's because of this or because of that. It's, it happens. You win some, you lose some. We got to be the adults in the situation and get our teams and our individuals and our athletes better. We grow through that stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm sure we'll revisit this topic throughout all the episodes. But parents, you are the key to your kids' success. There's a saying in education, a kid who isn't loved at home comes to school for love. A kid who is loved at home comes to school to learn. We got to love our kids. We got to give them their basic needs. And that's got to be first. We got to food, shelter, love. If we can give our kids those things, they can flourish in athletics. They can flourish in whatever we want them to flourish in. So let's get after it, parents, and let's do better. Coach them up.
No doubt, Jess.
Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado, COACHEM up@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado, COACHEM up@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado, COACHEM up@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado, COACHEM up@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado, COACHEM up@gmail.com. Thank you for listening to the Colorado Coach 'em Up podcast. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to coloradocoachemup@gmail.com. Once again, that is Colorado.